Hello class, Professor Cisneros here, and this is the week 3 wrap-up. So in week 3, you created timeline Gantt charts to take a look at a country, and their regulatory timelines, and see and laid out exactly how long it was going to take to get your first patient up. You always have to be careful when you're putting something like this together, or be very thoughtful, in that it's very obvious as to when one procedure starts and another one ends, and the subsequent one starts, and what can be done in parallel. Because if you have a slight overlap, then it can be a bit confusing to your reader as to what exactly does that mean. Does that mean that one doesn't have to end after and for the next one to begin, or exactly what that means? And of course, it'll result in questions. When you're doing this of course, we provided you a template, but when you're doing this for real, what you can often do, or what I would do, is make it very obvious by the way that you lay these out, the way that you lay out your rows, that when one topic or one procedure starts and finishes, and what is connected to it. And so that resulted in me asking a number of questions because it wasn't clear just looking. I may know, but I want there to be some thought as to why is it that the reader, myself, and of course other students, classmates, and in real life it would be your teammates, understand exactly when something is, what is connected, what connected to each other, that to allow another part of the regulatory process, approval process, to begin. And so you may want to think about laying it out, which is something that you want to do with just about everything that you do with a study, whether it has to do with a time and events schedule, or a T&E schedule, or in this case with a Gantt chart as part of a PowerPoint slide. Otherwise, it went well. I want to remind everybody, in looking at some of the other weeks, be sure that you include all your references when you're doing your initial post. You respond to 3 other students, and that you're always clear about the types of questions that you're asking and your responses, and that they're always timely. So in week 4, what you're going to do is you're going to be evaluating whether or not these countries that you have been looking at, and in this case, all of the countries that you all have been looking at, not just 1 or 2, but all of the ones that all of your classmates, the list that was given at the beginning of the semester, as to whether or not the regulatory timelines will allow for you to include them as part of your study, and you'll be given your enrollment timelines. And so what you need to do is essentially reconcile the two. So after looking at each country's total timeline, will they have enough time to be able to enroll subjects? So let's say if it's 18 months, if you have 18 months to get this up and enrolled, if it takes 20 months for a site, or rather for a country, to get through their regulatory process, then it's obvious that they're not going to be included, because by the time they get to the regulatory process, your enrollment has already been completed. And that's actually happened to me in the past. I remember a number of years ago, there was a U.S. university physician that I met, and was had the patient population and was very anxious to participate. And it took the university over a year to complete their regulatory process. And he called me up. By the time it was done, he called me up, and he said he was very excited. And he said that he was ready to enroll, that they were complete and everything was done. And I had to tell him, I'm sorry, doc, but I'm already done with enrollment. So, I appreciate all of the effort, but you may want to go back to your university and explain to them that they need to begin to streamline their process, or think about how they're going about doing that. It's over the last number of years, universities have done exactly that, because the instance that I just described to you that actually happened to me was not a unique situation at all. And many studies were absolutely, including myself, were absolutely avoiding universities, and it was cutting them out of the research process. So many of them have streamlined to some degree their regulatory process, or they have contracted out with central IRBs to assist them with that. But getting back to week 4 for this assignment, you'll be looking at all of that, and then ultimately making some judgment calls. And you would be doing this in real life as to whether or not their base case scenario is good enough, and you want to rely on that to be able to meet those enrollment timelines, or if you want to rely on the worst case scenario. And of course, you would be taking your own experience as well as those of your team to be able to make that sort of judgment. So then you create a startup timeline comparison, and include listing all of the countries, and the instructions are there. I'm not going to read them all to you. You guys can do that. Exactly who you would include and who you wouldn't. For this, you don't need to list out any references, but do think about what you would do, and lay it out in the best, most concise way that you can. And if you have any questions, as always, you can reach out to me through email, or you can text, or both. So I look forward to looking at your slides.